This video tutorial will provide an overview of how providers may upload data in response to a coverage restoration request within the Broadband Data Collection Filer module. A coverage restoration request is created when a provider uploads and certifies broadband availability data in the BDC system that includes locations or areas previously removed based on the outcome of fixed and mobile availability challenges or the outcome of a verification or audit for individual locations or areas. After a coverage restoration request is created in the BDC system, the provider will be able to submit an appropriate reason code for the coverage it wishes to restore, along with required infrastructure data. Providers will have until the opening date of the next filing window after they initiate a coverage restoration request to complete and certify the data required. If a provider does not complete a coverage restoration request before the opening of the next filing window, the request will become moot. If the provider seeks to restore coverage in a subsequent biannual filing round, a new coverage restoration request will be created. Coverage restoration requests attach to the vintage of data associated with the broadband availability data submitted in the BDC system that created the request. If a restoration request is successful, the provider's broadband availability would be restored on the map from the data vintage onward, but any vintages prior to the restoration request would continue to reflect the outcome of an earlier challenge, verification, or audit. For additional information on coverage restoration requests and the response data associated with them, please review the coverage restoration data specification documentation on the BDC Help Center website or consult the BDC Filer Module User Manual. When completing your biannual submission data, you are required to run final data checks. One of those final data checks will flag any locations that you've included in your data where you've previously conceded or lost a challenge, or where you failed a verification. Another final data check will do the same, only with hexagons associated with mobile broadband availability data. You can see those two checks here. If you trigger these checks, then proceed to certify your submission without modifying your data any further, for the current biannual submission data as of date, coverage restoration requests will be created for the locations or hexagons that were flagged within these final data checks. Once the coverage restoration request has been generated, a link will appear on both the submissions dashboard and submission overview pages, allowing you to proceed to the coverage restoration response workflow. The Fixed Coverage Restoration Overview page allows you to create responses that will allow you to submit data and attempt to restore broadband coverage to the National Broadband Map. For this tutorial, I'll focus on the Fixed Coverage Restoration Response workflow, but the Mobile Coverage Restoration Response is very similar, except that for the mobile response, the data will be represented in hexagons rather than locations. At the top of the Coverage Restoration Overview page, you'll see a summary count table. This includes a total count of locations seeking restoration, along with counts of locations where data has been submitted and counts of locations with data needed. In this case, I've yet to certify a response, so my locations with data submitted count is 0. The right side of the table includes counts of locations that your entity has certified as part of coverage restoration response data, broken out by FCC adjudication decisions, either verified, where coverage has been restored, failed, where coverage has not been restored, or pending, where FCC review is currently in progress. These counts are all currently 0, as I've yet to certify a response on my end. At the top of the page are two exports, pending location IDs and responded location IDs. You can use the data from the pending file to populate the restoration code data files when you submit your response data. Your entity can elect to respond to all locations within a coverage restoration request at once, or across multiple submissions. Each submission will be separately adjudicated by the FCC. To respond to a coverage restoration request, begin by clicking the blue Create New button here, then entering a response name value. Your data will now be included in the table on the page, which includes columns for reference ID, date created, response record count, response status, which is the status of my response here, which is currently pending, and the FCC adjudication status here, which again is pending and will be so until we certify our submission here. Clicking the Submit Response Data button will navigate you to a coverage restoration details page, which allows you to view information for each location that you've included within your response data for the selected submission. The table on this coverage restoration details page will not include any location data until your entity has uploaded a restoration code response data file, which identifies the locations that you wish to restore on the national broadband map. Once data has been uploaded, the table on this page will be populated with all the locations you've included within your response. Clicking the blue Submit Response Data button here will navigate you to a workflow that will allow you to submit your response data. Within this response data workflow, you can submit response data and optional supporting documentation to accompany your submission. If your response data includes terrestrial fixed wireless technologies, you will also be required to run final data checks before having the ability to certify your response. Within the response data step card, users must upload a valid restoration code response data file, which identifies the locations you are responding to within this submission. Please consult the coverage restoration data specification documentation before submitting this file upload. Here is an example of the restoration response code file, which I've highlighted in Excel to help demonstrate the differences between verification data and challenge data. The 10 records highlighted in purple are locations that I'd like to restore based on a failed verification request. For these locations, I need to include the verification ref ID along with the location ID, technology, BizRes code, and reason code. These reason code values can be found within the data spec documentation. I can also add an explanation for each record in my file. The 3 locations in green are challenge IDs that I'm looking to restore. Instead of a verification reference ID, I need to include the challenge ID and category code of the challenge, along with the location ID, technology, BizRes code, and reason code values. By clicking the blue Upload button here, I can initiate the process. Once you've selected a file for upload, a processing status will be displayed. If your file includes invalid data, file validations will be displayed on the page. Once you rectify those issues, you may upload a new file. Once your restoration code response data file is uploaded successfully, an infrastructure data table will be displayed. This table will be populated based on the technologies you included within your restoration code response file. In this example, my file included cable technologies only, tech code 40, so I will be required to upload 2 additional infrastructure files, distribution hub locations and fixed wireline access node locations. These 2 infrastructure files are required for any wireline technology, including cable, copper, and fiber. And I can upload files by doing so here. For each technology in your response data file, you will be required to upload infrastructure data. The required infrastructure data is different for each technology. For example, satellite technology requires 4 files to complete the response data step, while terrestrial fixed wireless technologies require 5. Fixed wireless technologies will also require providers to run final data checks before proceeding to certification. Once all files have been uploaded, the supporting documents card at the top of the page will be unlocked. If your response includes fixed wireless technologies, a final data checks card will also be displayed here. The final data checks card will not be displayed in this case because I'm uploading cable technologies as part of my response data. Now that the supporting documents card is unlocked, once this file has now been uploaded as valid, I can proceed to upload supporting documentation if I wish. If you do not wish to upload supporting documentation, you may bypass this step and proceed to the final data check step for fixed wireless technologies, or to the certification step for wireline and satellite technologies. In this example, I'll just upload the same file I uploaded before, but I can upload any sort of file as a supporting document here. Once this file upload is complete, I can then proceed to the certified data card. Prior to certifying your response, you'll be presented with a preview of your response data. This includes counts of infrastructure and supporting documents that have been submitted. You can see those counts on this page here. To certify your submission, click the blue Certify button here on the Certified Data card. A modal will display certification language, and you will need to select a contact from the drop-down menu here. To certify the submission, the certifying official contact must have a verified email address. This menu will default to the contact your entity has assigned as the certifying official on the entity information page. Once a contact is selected, the title, email, phone, and address fields will be automatically populated using the information that was entered on the entity information page. Click the checkbox here, then click the Certify Data button to proceed. You will now be navigated to the Coverage Restoration Details page. On this page, you can now search the table for locations you've included within your response data. So previously where this page was blank, if I search now, I can see all the locations that I included within my response. This table includes a data type column, which will show challenge or verification, and then other information, including the ID of the challenge or verification ref ID, location ID, the technology, BizRes value, the speeds for the location, category, a restoration code description, which I entered within my reason code file. For challenges, I can view certification details as to when the challenge was upheld or certified or removed, and then a restoration adjudication column here. This will be pending until the FCC adjudicates the response that I've submitted. As I navigate back to the Coverage Restoration Overview page, I can now see that my response has been completed, which indicates to the FCC that it is ready for adjudication. If you wish to decertify your response data for any reason, you can click the Decertify button here to undo your certification. The Decertify button will only be displayed if the adjudication status column value is pending, i.e. the FCC has not verified or failed the locations within your response. Doing so will allow you to re-enter your fixed coverage restoration workflow and modify your data as necessary. The summary table at the top of the page here will now be updated to reflect the locations you included within your response data. You can see here I now have 13 locations with data submitted, and this count has dropped down from the original 2,189. I also have 13 locations pending the FCC review in progress. As the FCC adjudicates your certified response data, the count of pending, verified, and failed records will be updated as well. As I noted previously, the workflow for responding to mobile coverage restoration requests is similar to the fixed broadband workflow. Where with the fixed restoration response you were responding with locations, the mobile response workflow utilizes hexagon IDs. I previously certified a response on the mobile side for this FRN, and I'll take you through that workflow now. Similar to the fixed provider response workflow, you can download a pending hexagon IDs export that can be used to populate your restoration code response data file. You can also create and name a response, which will be added to the table below. I've previously certified this response, so it will be read-only as I review my data. The restoration details page is populated with the hexagon information I included in my response. And I can click on Challenge ID information to view additional information within a corresponding modal. The table also includes information for data type of challenge or verification, the date created, hex ID information, technology and environment information, the resolution date, and the restoration code description value I included within my response file. In this example, the FCC has verified that coverage can be restored to the map, so I can click on that information to view the outcome and outcome description details provided by the FCC. Within the response data workflow, you can see that I uploaded a restoration code response data file, then infrastructure data based on the technologies that I included within my response file, which in this case was both 4G and 5G. The restoration code response file is similar on the mobile side to the fixed side, but please consult the data specifications documentation before uploading. In this example, the 2 rows highlighted in green signify challenge IDs that I'm looking to restore on the map, so I need to populate the challenge ID field, while the 4 rows in purple are verifications that I'm responding to, so I need to include a verification audit ref ID value. In addition, I'll also need to include a value for H3 cell ID, environment code, technology, min down, min up, and then a reason code and accompanying explanation. For mobile coverage restoration responses, final data checks are required. So this is a step that users will need to complete before proceeding to certification. Final data checks analyze the data for any abnormalities or inconsistencies and serve as a safeguard to prevent any inaccurate data from being submitted through the BDC application. In this example here, my response triggered several final data check warnings. For each response, I needed to provide the FCC with an explanation for the issue that was flagged for further review. In some cases, final data checks may result in a hard stop error, which means I would need to rectify that issue before I can proceed to certification. Submissions cannot be certified if a hard stop error has been flagged as part of final data checks. Once the final data checks step has been completed, the response can be certified in a similar fashion here. As noted at the beginning of this tutorial, providers will have until the opening date of the next filing window after they initiate a coverage restoration request to complete and certify the data required. Coverage restoration requests attach to the vintage of data associated with the broadband availability data submitted in the BDC system that created the request. If a restoration request is successful, as in this example here where the adjudication status is verified, the provider's broadband availability would be restored on the map from that data vintage onward, but any vintages prior to the restoration request would continue to reflect the outcome of an earlier challenge or verification. For additional information on the coverage restoration response workflow, a user manual outlining each step of the process can be accessed within the top right menu of the BDC filer manual here. If you require additional information or wish to download the data specification documentation, please visit the BDC Help Center at help.bdc.fcc.gov.